Blue hour at Silver Spur. A slick banker crowds the table, a red-faced uncle snarls, a folded will and a tin cup sit between them. Eli Carver, city thin, steady-eyed, came home to fix a wheezing windmill and learn the land the slow way. Then his grandmother dies, the north ditch slows to a whisper, and Aline circles like a hawk. Whispers say, sell. Eli finds an old ledger, a hand-drawn line to Coyote Spring, and 3 words underlined, any natural run. Tomorrow at noon, a rope will test the water, and a town will choose between noise and truth. What's hidden in Alma's notes, and who closed the gate upstream? The morning after Eli Carver came home, the windmill turned in slow, complaining circles, and the barn door stuck halfway like it wasn't sure it wanted to start another day. Eli set his valise under the bed in the small room off the kitchen, and stepped into work without speeches. He checked the troughs, noted the sour smell of wet wood, and ran his palm along the sagging wire. He wrote a list on scrap paper, the way the city had taught him, quiet and orderly. By noon, he had tightened a corner brace and freed a stubborn hinge with kerosene, feeling something ease inside him each time metal agreed to move. Alma watched from the porch, a wool shawl around her shoulders, hip bandage beneath the calico. "You don't win with muscle," she said, voice rough with years and dust. "You win by outlasting." "I can do that," Eli answered, and meant it. They were eating late beans when a rider's dust trailed into the yard. Warren Carver swung down hard, boots hitting dirt with a thud that made the porch rail tremble. He was thick through the middle, red across the cheeks, and wore a grin that never reached his eyes. "Thought I'd look in on my dear mother," he announced, stepping through the doorway without waiting. His gaze slid past Alma to the kitchen shelf where the strongbox sat, and then to Eli, who rose slow and polite. "Afternoon, Uncle," Eli said. "Afternoon, boy," Warren replied, testing the word like a spur. "Heard you scurried back from your city job. Smart. This place needs a man who is not afraid to take charge." Alma set her spoon down. "We have charge enough, Warren." He tipped his hat to her and kept talking to Eli. "Temporary oversight, that's all. I'll carry the books until you learn the ropes. Shouldn't be more than a season." His hand spread, ready to receive imaginary ledgers. "We've got a system," Alma said. "My hand Mags helps. Eli's learning. It'll hold." As if summoned, Mags came through the side door, wiping windmill grease from her fingers with a bandana. Tall, sun-brown, and as steady as fence posts, she nodded to the room, then took in Warren's stance and the way Alma's mouth had gone thin. She didn't speak, but she moved closer to the strongbox. Warren chuckled, a friendly sound that sat wrong in the kitchen. "No need to be prickly. I'm here as kin." Another dust cloud rolled in, a tidy carriage edged by the barn, paint unscuffed, leather, polished. Mr. Pike stepped down, all neat cuffs and careful sympathy. He carried a hatbox and a portfolio. "Mrs. Carver," he said with a gentle bow, "word reached our office in Dusty Creek of your mishap. I'm deeply sorry." He set the hatbox on the table and opened it to reveal a modest tin of candy and a folded card. A small comfort. Alma gave the candy a flat look. "Kind of you to ride." "Of course. And while in the neighborhood, I thought it prudent to discuss a bridge note, strictly neighborly, just to keep the ranch floating until your grandson is settled." He glanced at Warren like they shared a private wisdom. "Feed prices jump this time of year. The windmill looks tired. A short-term advance secured by the deed would keep worries away." Eli felt the shift in the room, the way a street clerk senses a customer's hand reaching for his pocket. Warren spread his arms. "That's what I'm saying. Oversight. Order. Don't let the boy drown." "I'm not drowning," Eli said, voice low. "I'm learning." Pike smiled as if indulging a child. "Learning is admirable, but markets don't wait." Alma's jaw set. "No notes, Mr. Pike. If we can't afford feed, we'll sell 2 steers and sleep easier." Pike clicked his tongue softly. "Unnecessary sacrifice. A signature now prevents pain later." Mags shifted her weight, boots whispering. "Funny how pain gets scheduled." The banker's eyes flicked to her, then back to the strongbox. "May we review your records?" "Strictly to confirm receivables." Alma reached for her cane and nodded to Eli, who brought the strongbox to the table. Inside were tidy bundles, receipts, pocket ledgers, and a sealed envelope tied with blue string. Alma touched the envelope with 2 fingers. "That's my will," she said. It stays sealed until I say, or until the preacher reads it. No exceptions. Of course, Pike murmured, gaze lingering a heartbeat too long. They went through receipts one by one. Eli read amounts, Alma confirmed deliveries, Mags added dates from memory. Pike turned pages with quick, practiced fingers, stacking what he called routine items into his portfolio to copy at the office. Warren wandered and commented, this fence rotten, that roof sagging, painting the necessary work as failure. Eli kept his breath even. He had seen fast hands behind counters, the way a coin slides when a customer looks away. So, when Pike reached for the pocket ledger with a conversational smile, "This must be your day book, yes?" and let it drift toward his open satchel, Eli laid his palm on the leather. "That stays," he said. Pike's smile thinned. Naturally, merely glancing, Mag saw it too. Her eyes met Eli's, calm as a pond before rain. The talk wore on until the light went the color of old brass. Pike stood, smoothing his cuffs. "Think on the note," he said. "Interest-friendly as a church supper." Warren kissed Alma's cheek and smelled like whiskey. "I'll fetch a wagon tomorrow, Ma. We'll box your papers somewhere safe. No need for a fuss." "You'll do no such thing," Alma replied, but fatigue threaded her words. On the porch, a gust pried the screen door open and slammed it shut again, hinge squealing. Eli stepped into the wind, feeling how it pushed at everything that wasn't anchored well. Behind him, he heard the quiet rustle of Mags moving the pocket ledger back beneath the tea towels and the soft, unmistakable slip of something else, Pike's business card, finding its way into his coat. He didn't tear it up. He didn't take the bait. He simply stood, watching the banker's carriage roll smooth toward town and his uncle's sway-backed gelding weave after it, and he counted the first wire cut on a fence he meant to keep standing. The next cut, he knew, wouldn't be so polite. By breakfast, the first rumor had already beat the sunlight into Dusty Creek. Eli Carver was a nice boy but lost, and Silver Spur was circling the drain. Folks repeated it with the same tone they used for weather, not cruel, just inevitable. Warren helped it along. From the hotel porch, coffee in one hand, pride in the other. "Temporary oversight," he told anyone with ears, "just until the kid finds his feet." At mid-morning, a folded notice arrived by courier from Mr. Pike's office. Eli opened it on the porch rail while the windmill clicked behind him. "Statement of Leanne," the heading read, for feed advances and services rendered at an interest that looked neighborly until you did the math. Pike had backdated charges to the week of Alma's fall and added a line called administrative accommodation. It was legal enough to look clean and crooked enough to smell. Mags read over his shoulder. "He set the table before we sat down." Eli folded the notice carefully. "We'll eat somewhere else." "Good," she said, "because we can't afford his menu." They spent the morning checking fence north of the house, talking little, working steady. At noon, two strangers appeared by the barn, men with tidy hats and loose eyes, the kind that stay near trouble without ever getting named for it. One leaned against a post and scraped something from under his fingernails with a matchstick. "You fellas need something?" Eli asked, polite. "Private security," the first answered, flashing a badge he could have bought with any paycheck. "Bank hires us to watch collateral." Mags's jaw ticked once. "You watching a barn or measuring a grave?" "Don't want no trouble," the man said, glancing at his partner. "Just making sure assets don't wander." Eli nodded like he'd heard about weather again. He went back to the fence, but he measured from that moment. Footfalls, shadows, how far a shout traveled to the house. He didn't pick a fight. He made a count. Widow Marta Hale arrived around 2 with a pot of chicken broth and a stack of folded papers under her arm. She was small and decisive, gray hair braided and pinned, apron clean, boots muddy from chores. "You look like men who forgot to eat," she said, setting the pot by the stove. She watched the strangers outside through the window. Coyotes in shirt sleeves. "How's the price of feed in town?" Eli asked. "Too high by half," she said. "Pike's got a whispering choir, but I brought these." She opened her bundle, old invoices, handbills, and a brittle letter from 3 winters back. "After funerals, his rates jump. He does it soft, names it seasonal, but I kept a ledger of quotes. Your Alma told me once, dates matter. They still do." Eli's throat burned hot and grateful. "Thank you, ma'am." Marta patted his forearm like he was borrowed kin. Your grandmother brought soup to my porch when Sam died. I keep tallies that count. By late afternoon, Jonah ghosted in from the livery, a narrow-shouldered kid with hay in his hair and eyes the color of creek stones. He held his cap in both hands. Got a thing to show, he said, almost a whisper. Miss Alma told me, when it's too loud, go where the water talks. He pointed north. We stacked a stone pile once, marked it for lessons. Eli looked at the pond. The surface lay, dull as pewter. The outflow to the north ditch was a sulky trickle, less than yesterday. We'll go, he said. They saddled 3 horses. Mags rode point, Jonah in the middle, Eli behind to watch the line. The strangers at the barn tracked them for 50 yards, then thought better of it when Marta stepped onto the porch with a broom like a staff and stared them down until they remembered to blink. The country north was brown and honest. Mesquite ribs, low swales, a scatter of basalt that had broken the same way for 1,000,000 years. They cut across to a shallow draw where the soil darkened and the sage grew thicker. Jonah led them to a cairn of flat stones tucked under a scrub oak, each rock careful as a prayer. He knelt and lifted the top stone. Beneath it lay a circle of smaller rocks and, in the center, a sliver of tin stamped with 2 letters, CS. Coyote Spring, Mags said. Alma used to say there's a seam under here, Jonah murmured. Said the water's shy, but constant. Said when a man blocks it, the land snitches with silence. They followed the faint run toward the upstream fence line. 50 yards on, the ground told the truth. Damp gone to dry, grass to dust, a new scuff of boot marks going and coming at the same place. A tight weave of wire crossed a narrow slot between rocks, and behind it a plank sat like a tongue in a throat. The trickle thinned to a drip, then nothing. Mags crouched and touched the wire. Fresh. Whoever did this carries soft pliers and a clock. Why? Jonah asked. So, a banker can point at a coughing herd, she said, and an uncle can say, see? Eli took a long breath, fighting the warm rush that wanted to roll into anger. Alma had taught him the ranch the way a school teaches letters, slow, with patience for mistakes. He could hear her clear as morning. Don't break what proves the truth. He stood, hands open. We don't cut it. We mark it. We bring a rope and a witness and the sun at our back. Mags nodded. And a judge who knows where his own childhood stones are buried. Eli looked along the dry groove toward home, picturing the windmill blades stuttering in a breeze that deserved water. He felt the circle tighten, lean paper, hired watchers, a family name made heavy by one loud voice. And in the tightening, he also felt who stood inside it with him. A widow who counted dates, a hand who didn't spook, a boy who remembered words. Tomorrow, he said, soft but decided. We start the count in public. A hawk lifted from the scrub and wheeled toward the west, and the last of the day went the color of brass again. Like the world was warning him he'd need his shine. Somewhere between the barn and the bank, another rumor was already being loaded. The question was, who would carry it first? Sleep came in pieces, like fence wire cut and retwisted. Eli rose before the rooster and lit the kitchen lamp. Alma's pocket ledger sat where Mags had slipped it back, beneath tea towels, next to a jar of buttons and a stub of pencil. He carried it too. The table breathed once and opened to the back, where Alma kept her small but sharp things. Her handwriting marched neat as drilled soldiers. Dates on the left, short notes on the right, calves sold, seed bought, a loan refused with a smiley face no bigger than a fly's foot. Then a page headed Coyote Spring, Lessons. Beneath it, a small sketch, a crooked line for the run, a square for the north fence, and a dot where the cairn lived. 3 words underlined. Any natural run. Mags came in tying her braid, eyes still soft with sleep. Find us a shovel for the mind? Maybe. Eli turned the page. Listen. He read aloud the line Alma had copied years back. Easement recorded. Book C, page 112. Silver Spur. Access to Coyote Spring via any natural run, perpetual, consideration $1, and neighborly goodwill. Then, lower, another note. Judge's boyhood stones hold the proof. Mags pulled a chair. Book C is old. County clerk'll make you earn it. I'll pay with patience. Eli slid the wool ledger into his coat. You and Jonah keep eyes on the watchers. If Warren comes, count his questions. Counting's my second language, she said. Dusty Creek's courthouse sat on the high end of Main, a square building with a clock that always ran 4 minutes late. Inside, it smelled like iron keys and old paper. The county clerk, Miss Donner, had a spine like a fence picket and spectacles that kept slipping. She pushed them up when Eli gave his name. "You're Alma Carver's boy," she said. Not a question. "Grandson," he answered. "Looking for an easement. Book C, page 112, if it pleases." "Book C never pleases," she said, but there was a warmth in the corner of her mouth. She disappeared into the stacks and came back with a cloth-wrapped volume heavy as a saddle. "Hands clean?" Eli rubbed his palms on his trousers and nodded. The pages rasped like dry grass. He found the index, then the place. There it was. Grant of easement, Coyote Spring to Silver Spur Ranch, through any natural run. Perpetual. Recorded July 2nd, 1869. Consideration: $1, 1 handshake. Parties: Stover and Hale to Alma D. Carver. "Hale," Eli breathed. Miss Donner leaned in. "Widow Marta's late Sam. Your Alma put her neighbors' names on most anything good. Kept folks tied with kindness, same as rope." Below his eye caught a second paragraph, one he didn't expect. Priority: easement and prior grazing rights superior to any subsequent lien, deed of trust, or claim against Silver Spur property. Eli read it twice. "Superior to any subsequent lien," he repeated, slower, like tasting honey that might be tar. Miss Donner nodded. Back in '69, the board was nervous about speculators. Judge Harwood, junior clerk back then, liked to tuck in language that saved people headaches, could call it a habit, might call it a favor to common sense. "Judge Harwood," Eli murmured. "He and Alma stacked those stones as kids." Miss Donner smiled. "They were the town's worst kind of trouble. Honest." She tapped the page with a knuckle. "You'll want a certified copy. I want 3, he said. And a map book, if you have one with the spring marked." "We don't map springs worth keeping," she replied. "We write them down and let neighbors remember where they are." She nonetheless fetched the plat with boundary lines, and a faint pencil note where someone had once scribbled CES on a dotted draw, then rubbed it near clean. While she wrote out the certifications in her looping hand, Eli stood with the book open, hearing the courthouse clock plod its 4 minutes late way around the hour. He pictured Pike's neat cuffs and soft-voiced urgency. He saw Warren on the porch telling the sky what it already knew. He felt his grandmother close by, the way you feel sun on your back even in shade. "Proof's a shy animal," Miss Donner said, tying ribbons to the copies. "It likes quiet hands." "I've got those," Eli answered. On his way out, he stopped at the church. The double doors hung open for air, and the belfry rope moved with the draft like a long lung. Reverend Ames met him in the aisle, sleeves rolled, oiling pews. "Alma kept me honest," the preacher said, before Eli spoke a word. "You look like a man carrying one of her errands." "I need a safe shelf, short term," Eli said. 2 copies here, 1 on me, no gossip." Ames nodded and opened a side cabinet where communion plates and old minutes lived. "This wood keeps secrets." Back at the ranch, the day had picked up elbows. The 2 hired watchers dug their boots in like they expected roots. Jonah sat on the well kiffe whittling a stick to nothing, then handed it to Eli like a baton. "Got something?" the boy asked. "A hinge," Eli said. "If the spring's flow is shown steady, Pike's Lean can't claim the water that keeps us alive. Easement's first in line. Everything else stands behind." Mags's eyes flicked to the north. "Then we prove the flow." In daylight, with half the town holding a rope. Eli breathed in slow. Fear and relief made a strange twine in his chest, but it held. "We asked the judge to look on Saturday, and we keep the ledger close until then." Jonah grinned, a flash of brave where there had been worry. "Miss Alma always said, a quiet key opens loud doors." Eli tucked the certified copies inside his vest and felt their papery weight against his ribs. It was the first time since the stage that his hands stopped shaking. The windmill clicked, 1, 2, like it agreed. "Saturday," he said, almost to Alma. "Let's show what runs." Across town, Pike's tidy carriage rolled up to the hotel porch, and Warren tipped his cup for the afternoon's new rumor, unaware that the oldest words in the county were about to speak louder. By Friday evening, the church hall smelled of coffee, floor wax, and weathered wood. Lamps threw soft circles over rows of benches. Half the valley turned up in their Sunday coats, though it wasn't Sunday. Ranch wives with dishwater hands, cow hands and clean shirts, store clerks blinking off ledger dust. The belfry rope swayed a little in the draft, as if the bell itself were listening. Judge Harwood took the front table with Reverend Ames and Miss Donner from the clerk's office. The judge's hair had gone to snow at the temples, but his eyes kept their boyhood mischief, the sort that once stacked stones by a shy spring. He rapped the table with two knuckles. "We're here on neighbor business," he said. "Keep your tempers sheathed and your hats off." Warren Carver was already too big for his bench. He rose, turned, and let the room see him. "Silver spurs in a spin," he announced, voice spreading like spilled molasses. "My mother's health is failing, God keep her, and her city slicker grandson means well, but can't steer a plow. For the good of the family, I'm offering temporary oversight until we right the ship." A murmur rolled through the benches, some sympathetic, some sour. Widow Marta folded her arms and stared at Warren, as if eyeballing an overripe melon. Beast her, Mags leaned forward, elbows on knees, still as a fence. Post in drought. Pike stood when the sound peaked. He smoothed his mustache, selected a smile from his collection, and set papers on the table. "Our bank regrets the Carver family's difficulties," he said in a tone that managed to be both butter and blade. "We extended neighborly credit. Now we hold a protective lien. It would be negligent not to recommend a protective sale before the place collapses. Assets deserve professional care." Eli got to his feet slowly, hat in his hands. He didn't clear his throat or ask for permission. He looked at the judge, then at the hall that had held his Christmases and funerals since childhood. He spoke like a man reading ground, not a man selling it. "With respect, Your Honor," he said, "before anyone sells what my grandmother built, we need to look squarely at what she recorded." He laid Alma's pocket ledger on the table, open to the page marked Coyote Spring, Lessons. She wrote this years back. She drew a map. She underlined 3 words, any, natural run. Miss Donner helped me pull the record. Book C, page 112. He lifted a ribboned copy so anyone could see the seal catch lamplight. "It's a recorded easement, perpetual, and this line matters most." He read slowly, loud enough. "Easement and prior grazing rights are superior to any subsequent lien." The room shifted, boots scraping, someone whispering. "Superior?" Like it was a new marvel. Miss Donner nodded once, confirming. Pike's smile held, but his eyes cooled a shade. "Even if such language exists, easements don't water cattle, Mr. Carver. The spring in question is, by all accounts, capricious. If the flow has diminished, the ranch remains insolvent. Papers don't pump. That's why we prove the water," Eli said. "Not with talk, with rope, with witnesses." Judge Harwood's knuckles tapped again, softer. "Proposal?" "Saturday noon," Eli answered. "We walk the run from Coyote Spring to the North Ditch. We place a court rope in the creek and mark the depth. Anyone who wants to see can count with their own eyes. If the flow is steady, the easement stands first. The lien stands behind it. If it isn't steady," he swallowed. I'll know what to do." Pike leaned in, voice lower. "There are broader considerations. Even if you survive today's arithmetic, the will may be contested. Questions of capacity, undue influence. Mrs. Carver's recent fall was most unfortunate." A colder murmur moved the room this time. Widow Marta shot to standing. "Careful, Mr. Pike." She held the crowd's eye. "Alma's capacity was stronger than your interest table. Dates matter. She wrote them in a hand clearer than your titles." Warren laughed, but it died quick. "I just want what's best for Ma." Miss Donner pushed up her spectacles. "Best starts with truth that can be seen." She looked to the judge. "The office can witness." Reverend Ames set 2 tin cups between the papers like weights. "And the church hall will hold any records until then, quietly." The judge let the murmurs settle. "We'll hear. Proof Saturday. Noon sharp." He eyed Pike. "That gives your men time to uncomplicate anything that's gotten complicated upstream." Pike's mustache didn't twitch. "I employ no men upstream." "Then you won't mind them moving aside?" Mag said from the benches, calm as shade. Laughter cracked the tension and died quick. Jonah's hand shot up halfway, a boy forgetting where he was. "Sir?" Miss Alma left a stone pile. She said, "When it's too loud, go where the water talks. I can show it." "That'll do," the judge said, a fondness passing over his face like a cloud. "Bring your stones." The belfry rope swayed again, brushing Eli's shoulder as he stepped into the aisle to leave. Outside, the sky wore a thin rim of stars over Dusty Creek. Mags matched his pace. Marta fell in beside them. Jonah trotted to keep up. Behind them, Warren argued in low, hot words, and Pike gathered his papers into perfect stacks. Eli stopped under the bell's shadow and breathed the cool night. "We've got until noon," he said. "Let's make our proofs hard to ignore." A faint creak came from the north, as if a hidden gate had shifted in the dark, too soon to tell whether by wind or by a careful hand. Dawn put a thin silver edge on the mesquite when Eli swung into the saddle. Mags was already mounted, Jonah rubbing sleep from his eyes, a coil of rope draped across his lap. They carried stakes cut from fence scraps, a hammer, and 2 canvas flags painted in lamp black. Court notice. The air had that just-before-light chill that makes a man honest with himself. "We mark from spring to ditch," Eli said, voice low so it wouldn't carry toward the house where Warren might be pretending to sleep. "Every bend that holds water in a wet year gets a stake and a note." "And a witness," Mags added, tipping her hat toward Jonah. "Boy's got eyes like a ledger." They rode north, past the cairn Jonah had shown, to where the ground remembered damp. Eli set the first stake at the spring mouth, driving it into packed soil while Mags read from Alma's pocket ledger, the page titled Coyote Spring Lessons. He wired a canvas flag to the stake and tied a strip of red cloth below it, the color bright against the gray morning. "Stake 2, Jonah called, standing in a shallow swale. "Water ran here in March." "Write it," Eli said. He printed neat, the way the city had taught him. Stake 2, natural run, evident, moss, root stain. By the third stake, the sun found the ridge, turning the world from pewter to brass. They worked steady, a quiet rhythm. Ride, study, mark, write. Mags checked upstream for fresh wire. Eli checked the ground for boot scuffs. Jonah kept count out loud so the line itself grew a voice. "Stake 5, stake 6. At the north fence, they tied the last flag where the run met the ranch ditch, then stepped back together and looked down to the faint grooves stitched with their markers. It read like a sentence Alma had started and asked them to finish. "Now we file it where paper can't get misplaced," Mags siddered. Dusty Creek's courthouse opened at 9. Miss Donner blinked at their flags leaning like spare ribs against her counter. Eli set down a sworn notice he'd written by lamplight. Request for a court-watched inspection at noon Saturday, with a map sketched from Alma's page and the stake numbers labeled. "You do make my morning interesting," Miss Donner said, stamping the notice so the seal bit deep. "I'll post one here, one on the church board, and send one to Judge Harwood's pocket." She slid Eli a receipt. "Paper is loud when it's stamped." "Louder than rumor?" Jonah asked. "Depends who's listening," she said, and winked. They were back at Silver Spur by afternoon, dust in their cuffs, a thin pride in their bones. That feeling soured quick. The windmill's tail vane hung crooked as a busted finger. The stay cable lay in the dirt, clean cut. In the near pasture, a pale glaze dusted a patch of grass like frost, though the day ran warm. Mags crouched, pinched a few blades, and sniffed, her jaw set. "Salt," she said, just enough to make a cow cough and turn her nose. Eli took it in, the cut stay, the salted patch, the 2 hired watchers lounging in the shade of the barn with looks that waited to be innocent. He walked past them without accusation and righted the fallen cable. "Jonah, fetch the spare thimble and the short length of chain." One of the watchers drawled, "Wind sure is rough on outfits that ain't kept." "True," Eli said, not looking up. "Wind tests what's worth keeping." Jonah returned running. Eli and Mags worked by habit. Thread the cable, set the thimble, bolt the clamp, pull until the tail took the wind straight. The mill shuddered, then accepted the breeze and started its slow, saving turn. The pump rod thumped like a big heart, thinking better of stopping. An hour later, a carriage rolled in smooth as always. Pike stepped down, papers in a leather folder, the smell of cologne cutting through dust. "Afternoon," he said, and nodded toward the fixed mill. "I do. Hate to see non-functioning improvements. Fortunately, our office is prepared." He passed a folded document to Eli. "Notice of default, contingent on sustained non-operation and impaired pasture. Conditions appear trending." Eli read the heading, then the small print that tried to sound helpful. You drove quick, he said. Efficiency is neighborly, Pike replied. His gaze slid from the repaired cable to the salted ground, and he smiled like a man admiring weather he'd predicted. Widow Marta arrived as if pulled by the same string that drew trouble. Apron on, hair pinned tight, a cloth-wrapped loaf in one hand and a ledger page in the other. She read the notice over Eli's shoulder and snorted. Funny thing about contingent, Mr. Pike, she said. It goes from true to false the minute somebody who cares shows up with a wrench. Pike bowed slightly. Mrs. Hale, always a pleasure. Mags took the notice, folded it small, and slid it into Alma's ledger. Church safe, she said to Eli. Quiet. Tonight, he answered. They worked by lantern after sundown, checking every bolt on the mill, hauling water to the troughs by bucket, so the herd drank clean while the pump caught up. Eli's hands burned, but the sting steadied him. When the stars came out cold and close, he saddled up again. Reverend Ames opened the church side door at Eli's knock. Eli placed Alma's ledger and Pike's newest notice in the cabinet beside the communion plates. Keep these where bells can hear, he said. Bells have long memories, Ames replied. Back in the yard, the windmill turned faithful as prayer. Eli stood with Mags and Jonah, salt crunching under their boots. He felt tired the way a man feels after telling the truth all day in rooms that prefers easy lies. Tomorrow, Mags said, looking north, we pull the hidden gate with the sun watching. And with a judge counting, Eli added. Jonah pointed to the horizon where a line of dark clouds stacked up like worry. Weather's coming. So is noon, Eli said. Jaw set, eyes steady. Let's make sure one of them breaks our way. Morning broke in a weak wash of gray, the kind of light that lets rumor arrive first. Eli was hauling a bucket to the troughs when dust trailed up the lane. Deputy Cole rode in slow, hat low, a folded paper tucked neat in his breast pocket. He wasn't a bad man, just one who liked the rails of procedure under his boots. Eli, he called, swinging down, got a complaint to answer. Mags came to the porch, drying her hands on a flour sack. Jonah hovered by the windmill, eyes narrow, like he could hear trouble before it spoke. What complaint? Eli asked. Cole eased the paper out. Tampering with a posted gate on communal range. Ordinance says you can't alter a barrier without county say-so. Says here you disturbed a water structure. Witness unnamed. Mags's eyebrows went up. Unnamed like a gust of wind. Cole's mouth pressed flat. I don't write the lines. I ride them. Judge will see you by dawn. Likely a misunderstanding. Pike's carriage appeared on the lane as if it had been waiting for its cue. He tipped his hat just enough to be mannerly. Warren, red-cheeked and proud, lingered at the corner of the barn with a coffee tin he hadn't earned. Eli kept his voice even. Deputy, we marked a natural run with stakes and filed a notice. We didn't move a thing. We asked for court eyes at noon. That'll all help, Cole said, glancing toward the watchers by the barn. But I have to bring you in. Mags took one step forward. You going to cuff a man for not cutting a rope? Cole shook his head. No irons. Just a ride. I'm not stacking shame where it don't belong. Eli looked at the herd, then the mill turning honest again, then at Jonah, whose mouth had gone thin as a pencil line. He nodded once. Mags, keep the copies where Reverend Ames put them. Feed the cattle from the far trough. Jonah, stay near the house. Warren chuckled, the sound too happy for the hour. Told you, boy. Paper games bite. Back. Pike softened his expression like a good coat. We all regret the confusion. Not all, Marta Hale said, arriving with her usual uncanny timing, a sack of nails in one hand. I'll sit on that porch till the moon climbs. Go on, Eli. Truth has legs longer than lies. The ride to town carried more eyes than miles. Folks watched from storefronts with that particular sympathy reserved for neighbors in a bind. No one spat, no one laughed. Shame was quiet, not a spectacle, just a wait. The jail sat behind the courthouse, a square room with 2 barred doors and a cot that had learned too many backs. Cole unlocked the nearer cell. I'll tell Harwood it smells wrong, he said, almost apologizing. He'll see you at first light. Eli stepped inside, the door shut with a sigh that felt older than law. He sat, folded his hands, and counted the stakes he'd set that morning, then the stones under the scrub oak, then the lines of Alma's hand in the ledger. Counting kept the panic from taking shape. Sometime near midnight, soft footsteps scuffed the hallway. A small shadow slipped up to the bars. Jonah, hair askew under his cap, breath puffing from the run. "Can't stay," he whispered, shoving something flat through the bars. "Miss Alma told me to bring this if ever the room got too small." It was a tin star, dull with years, edges rounded by pockets. On the back, scratched faint as a moth's foot. "Stand straight." Eli closed his hand around it. The metal held a little warmth that wasn't the room's. "You shouldn't have come." "I didn't," Jonah said, eyes bright. "I'm just a shadow." He grinned once and vanished the way boys do, like a truth you remember after the door's shut. He slept in stitches. Just before dawn, the lock turned again. Judge Harwood stood in the corridor with Cole at his shoulder, shirt collar open, hair not yet made presentable for a bench. He studied Eli through the bars the way a father studies a map. "Mr. Carver," he said, "I'm displeased." "Yes, sir," Eli answered. "At the arrest," Harwood added. He looked to Cole. "Bring him out." In the front room, the judge skimmed the complaint, then set it aside like a plate that had gone off. "Ordinance applies when a man breaks public fixtures or moves posted barriers. Your filing says you did neither. Until someone proves otherwise, you'll walk out of here and do your work." Cole looked relieved. "I'll fix the record." "Do," Harwood said. He turned to Eli. "No more nights in this room unless you earn them. Today at noon, we test water. Don't bring speeches. Bring rope, ledger pages, and that boy who remembers stones." Eli slipped the tin star into his vest pocket and felt the rightness of its weight. "Yes, sir." When he stepped into the pale morning, Dusty Creek felt like a town holding its breath. Warren lounged on the hotel porch pretending not to watch. Pike crossed the street without hurry, gloves tucked just so, eyes measuring. The windmill on Silver Spur threw a slow wink in the distance. Mags met Eli at the lane with 2 horses and a look that said she'd slept with one ear open. Marta handed him a biscuit wrapped in a clean rag and another folded paper, the certified copy of Book C she'd fetched again, just in case. "Eat," she ordered. "Stand straight." He did. The biscuit tasted like a thing made by hands that expected to keep making. Noon was a handful of hours away, and everything that mattered had to cross those hours on foot. Somewhere north, a hidden gate waited like a lie rehearsing its lines, and Eli meant to catch it mid-sentence. By noon, the sky was the color of scrubbed tin, and half the county lined the draw. Hats made a moving shore, children clung to fence rails. Even the wind quieted like it wanted to hear. Judge Harwood rode up with Miss Donner and Deputy Cole. Reverend Ames carried a coil of rope on his shoulder, the way a man carries duty. Widow Marta stood planted near the first stake, apron clean like a flag. Mags and Jonah flanked Eli without needing to ask where to be. Pike arrived last, immaculate as always, a surveyor in tow, thin fellow with a brass transit and a measuring rod tall as a door. Warren leaned on his saddle horn, smiling the way a man smiles when he thinks the joke's paid for. Harwood lifted a hand. "We're here to see water and read what was written. Keep your voices lower than the creek." Eli stepped to stake 1, the mouth of Coyote Spring, and drove the judge's rope pin into damp soil. Ames paid out line, and Eli tied a pebble-weighted knot at the surface. "This knot marks depth," he said. "If it travels steady, the easement holds first place." Pike's surveyor planted his rod nearby and called the numbers the way a storekeeper calls weights. "Shallow," he said, almost cheerful. Eli didn't argue. He moved to stake 2 with the rope, Jonah counting steps, Miss Donner recording. The knot kissed the surface again. Same wet, same glint. At stake 3, the rope showed a hair more depth, cooled by shade. Folks murmured, boots shifted. At stake 4, where the run narrowed between rock, the knot dropped and clicked the stone lip, then rose again. Pike's voice slipped silk over steel. "You'll find your rope goes hungry at the top. Springs are fickle storytellers." "Then we will ask the oldest witness," Eli said. He nodded to Jonah. The boy jogged to the scrub oak and knelt at the cairn, small hands careful as prayer. He lifted the top stone, then the next, laying them in a neat line like commas. From the heart of the pile, he pulled a waxed packet sealed with Alma's pressed thumbprint, the mark pinched oval from years. Jonah handed it to the judge as if handing across a blessing. Harwood turned the packet in his palm, throat working. "Alma D. Carver," he read, voice changed by memory. He broke the seal, unfolded the paper, and began. Slow, even, each word placed like a stone in a wall. "Affidavit. Coyote Spring is year-round, known to me since girlhood. Judge H and I set guide rocks at the narrow run in July of '69 to mark the lawful course. We counted 7 paces from the oak and 3 from the basalt lip. Notarized same day, he lifted his eyes to Pike. Her capacity appears legible. A ripple of restrained laughter moved the crowd. Warren's shoulders tightened. Eli stepped to the narrow, measured 7 paces by Jonah's count, 3 from the dark stone, and found what he hoped and feared. Wire bright as a fresh lie, twisted low in the slot, and behind it a plank seated tight as a tongue in a clenched jaw. He did not touch it. He bent and let the court rope lie across the trickle and over the wire. "Your Honor," Eli said, straightening, "this obstruction is new. Our stakes yesterday showed damp above, starve below." Pike's mouth went warm again. "Natural debris. Flood years toss wood." Mags pointed to the twist. "Debris don't weave wire." Deputy Cole stepped forward, lifted his hands, and looked to the judge. Harwood nodded. Cole clipped the twist with a pocket nipper and eased the plank aside with 2 fingers, gentle as turning a page. Water slid through, then pushed, then hurried. No roar, just a sure whisper that made hats tilt and shoulders drop, like a long-held breath, finally let go. Miss Donner wrote 1 word in her book, steady, double, underlined. The surveyor's numbers changed tune. "Increase at every stake," he called, a little less proud of his stick. Pike's expression didn't crack. It cooled. "Even if flow resumes, insolvency stands. A bank protects assets." Widow Marta stepped to the line with a folded paper of her own. "And a town protects what's honest." She handed Harwood an addendum recorded last spring, Alma's neat hand naming the water easement superior to all subsequent encumbrances, and citing Book C again for good measure. The judge read, nodded once, and tucked it with the affidavit. "For the record," Harwood said, "the court finds the natural run unblocked and running. The easement is in force and prior to the lien. Mr. Pike, your security interest does not reach this water, nor the grazing it makes possible." The crowd didn't cheer, they breathed. Jonah grinned at the creek like it had told him a secret. Mags let a small smile show, then hid it under her brim. Eli felt the tin star in his vest pocket and the weight of Alma's voice. "We don't fight the land, we learn it." Pike turned to Warren, voice low, eyes bright with calculation. "There are other levers." Warren swallowed, pride sticking in his throat. "Like what?" "Like a will," Pike said, smoothing his cuff. "Contests change weather." Eli heard it, and something in the air stiffened again, as if the draw had just remembered a second storm. If the water ran clear, the paper war would find darker ink, and before sunset, the first blow would land from a place no rope could measure. The crowd drifted back toward town in a slow river, talk hushed, eyes brighter than at church on Christmas. Deputy Cole lingered at the spring to pencil a diagram and take down what folks had seen, wire, plank, the way the water, spoke when the mouth unlatched. "Say it plain," he told each witness. "Truth travels better when it's light." Miss Donner sealed her notes with a neat ribbon and tucked them into her satchel, like eggs that needed gentling. Judge Harwood cleared his throat at the edge of the draw. "We reconvene at the church hall," he said. "Time to read what the living promised the dead, and what the dead promised the living." Warren rode ahead, stiff-backed, jaw working. Pike's carriage followed, the surveyor quiet now, his rod collapsed like a flag furled after the parade has passed. Eli, Mags, and Jonah took the middle of the procession. Widow Marta walked, apron bright against dust, one hand in her pocket as if holding something valuable steady. Inside the hall, Reverend Ames set the tin coffee cup on the table beside the strongbox, then laid Alma's sealed envelope where the light touched it kindly. The bell rope hung still, a pale line in the corner. People found benches without scraping, the way they do when they know something tender is about to be handled. Pike stood, polished as ever. "Before we proceed, Your Honor, I must note our bank's position remains unchanged. The ranch's books reflect distress. Even with today's encouraging observations, management concerns persist." "Noted," Harwood said, flat. "And set aside for the moment we honor a woman's last words." He broke the blue string, lifted the seal, and unfolded Alma's will. The room leaned forward as if the paper itself breathed. Harwood read in the same steady cadence he'd used all morning, plain bequests to the church, to Marta's school pantry. to Mags for steadfast help and good sense. Then the ranch's heart. Silver spur to my grandson Elijah Carver, on condition he show up and keep showing, with care and grit. A few smiles reached eyes. Jonah sat straighter. Eli didn't move. He listened like a man at a bedside. Pike cleared his throat delicately. We reserve the right to contest on grounds of capacity, given Mrs. Carver's unfortunate fall. Widow Marta stepped forward without asking, holding out a folded, ribboned paper. Then add this to your reservation, she said to the judge. Recorded last spring. Alma walked to the clerk on her own 2 feet and filed it with Miss Donner watching. Miss Donner confirmed with a tap of ink. Harwood untied the ribbon and read, Codicil, if Elijah Carver ever quits or is carried off, by pride or by fate, the ranch water and grazing shall be stewarded by Jonah Pike, orphan stable boy, until Elijah returns or names another hand who keeps the same covenant. Reason, to keep speculators from picking bones, dead or alive. The name hit the benches like a soft slap. Jonah blinked, color rising. She told me I'd have lessons, he whispered, more to himself than anyone. Warren's face went red, then pale. You'll give a boy the keys over kin, he blurted, but even he heard how the words sounded in a hall that had watched Jonah carry water and Eli carry quiet. Burdens. Harwood's eyes warmed. Stewardship is not kingship, Mr. Carver. It is care. Your mother trusted the shape of it. He laid the codicil atop the will and tapped both with one finger. Between the easement and this, Mr. Pike, your lien sits behind the water and the hand that tends it. Pike held his smile in place like a man holding a hat in a stiff wind. We still have roots. Take them on paper, Harwood said, and take care how you walk. The court has seen enough weaves and wire for 1 week. Cole rose. For the record, I'll be taking statements on obstruction of a natural run. If any hired men have business out at Coyote Spring, they can come speak now while their names still weigh lightly. No one moved. The watchers from the barn studied their boots. Reverend Ames closed the strongbox with a gentle click. The bell will chime once, he said, hand on the rope. Not for mourning, for a promise. He drew down and let the note roll through the rafters. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Eli felt the sound in his chest, where the tin star rested against his vest, warm from the walk and the room and something older. He turned to Warren. Uncle, he said, quiet, there's work you can help with, or there's a road that goes the other way. I won't keep you from either truth. Warren's mouth opened, then shut. Pride and shame wrestled in his eyes like colts in a pen too small. He nodded once, awkward, unpracticed, and looked away. Pike gathered his papers into perfect squares. We'll be in touch, he said to no one in particular, which is almost the same as saying nothing at all. Outside, the windmill at Silver Spur caught a clean gust and turned like it meant to. The creek kept whispering its old story to anyone who cared to learn it. Eli stepped into the sunlight, with Mags and Jonah and Marta, the 4 of them a small, steady machine in a town that had seen plenty of noise. But paper fights don't end with one bell, and men who trade in edges don't dull easy. By sundown, a new letter would ask the hardest kind of question. What does keeping show up as when winter comes early? The letter arrived with a cold front, paper crisp as frost. Eli opened it at the porch rail while the windmill skimmed a bright winter sky. Mr. Pike's fine hand filled the page with softened language, prudent reassessment, resolution without prejudice, withdrawal of lien against flows, and grazing incidental thereto. The words were meant to sound like magnanimity. They read like retreat. Bank blinked, Mag said, coming up from the yard with a coil of wire on her shoulder. They blinked at the law, Eli answered, folding the letter and slipping it into Alma's ledger, where good sense belonged. Early snow dusted the mesa and stayed, not deep, just honest. Work turned into winter work, short days, long lists. Eli cut new braces and reset posts the hard freeze had pushed crooked. He and Mags tarred the barn roof, hands aching, breath white. Jonah learned to oil the windmill, bearings until the thump settled into a patient heartbeat you could rely on in the dark. Widow Marty sent bread that steamed when you broke it. She also sent a boy with 2's missing front teeth to trade arithmetic for eggs and a look at the pump rod. Let 'em learn the names of what keeps them, she said. It's education or dependency, not much in between. Deputy Cole came by with a formal statement, obstruction complaint dismissed for want of evidence that wasn't the town's laughter. He handed over a small brown envelope. Inside lay the clipped wire from the spring, sealed and labeled, not as trophy, but as memory. Sometimes you keep a lesson in a box, he said. Sometimes you hang it on a nail. Judge Harwood stopped once, wearing his old trail coat instead of the robe. He stood by the cairn and ran a glove over the stones as if they were names on a veteran's wall. She stacked these so a boy could find them, he said. You did. Jonah did, Eli answered. I followed. Harwood nodded, eyes at the horizon where the draw went thin. That'll make a good life of it. News of the codicil traveled slow but true. It did its work in kitchens. Men who had rolled their eyes at paper wisdom found themselves speaking softer to children who carried buckets. The record made stewardship into a thing a boy could grow into. Jonah stopped shying from rooms. He learned figures by lamplight from Marta and fence knots from Mags at dawn. If I hold it one day, he told Eli, fingers black with creosote, I'll hand it back better. You will, Eli said, or you won't be holding it long. Warren came in the thaw with a sack of nails and fewer words. He stood under the new ridge beam and cleared his throat 3 times before a sentence came out right. I was raised loud, he said. Didn't hear the world answer. If you'll have a hand that shuts up and hammers, I can swing from sunup to honest tired. Eli thought of Alma's tin star, of how the back of it said, stand straight, not stand alone. He nodded. You'll eat here if you work here. You'll count receipts out loud, and you'll leave every gate how you found it. Warren's eyes flashed at the last line, then softened like ice accepting water. He stuck out his hand. Mags watched both palms meet and didn't say a thing. Spring came on the creek's timetable. Grass lifted in the low places first. Shy at the edges of shade, the herd quit coughing. Calves found their feet, and, for a season, the world's math favored patience. Eli painted the barn a stubborn red that made the sky look bluer. He set wire straight enough you could sight by it. He and Jonah sanded the porch rail where Alma's hands had worn it smooth, then left one patch rough the way you leave a fieldstone in a wall to remember who built it. Eli invited the school to a Saturday morning walk. They started at the windmill because children like moving things, then walked the stakes with a church rope. Mags told the story of the wire without naming names. Jonah showed them. The cairn. He left the top stone in place and tapped it with one finger. Some lessons don't get opened, he said. You just remember where they are. At dusk, Eli sat on the step with the ledger open to Alma's page. He traced the words any natural run, the underline gone faint from years. The tin star warmed against his vest as the last light made the blade tips flash and darken, flash and darken. He heard her voice the way you hear creek talk when the town quiets. We don't fight the land, we learn it. He looked over at the boy who would someday carry a portion of that sentence, at the man learning to redo his, at the woman who never needed a title to be the spine of the place, at the neighbor who kept dates and grace in the same book. The ranch didn't feel saved, it felt kept. Come on, Eli said, rising when the first star appeared. Morning comes early. And when it did, the wind met the blades like an old friend, and Silver Spur answered in the only way that mattered, steady, plain, and alive.